Welcome to the We Hack Purple podcast, where each episode we meet someone from the information security industry. Right now, we are in season 3, which is all about securing software. I'm Tanya, your host, also known as She Hacks Purple, and this episode is sponsored by Semgrep. But you're like, Tanya, I've heard that spiel many times. What I want to know is, who is your guest? Well, my guest is Ray Leblanc. Welcome, Ray.
Hey.
Ray, if you've listened to We Hack Purple for a long time, you have met Ray before, especially if you went to any of the Alice and Bob Learn episodes that we did in 2021 every month. So Ray is a longtime friend and awesome person to learn from. So Ray, could you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, let's see. I've been doing application security since 2011 as a AppSec engineer, architect, and a developer. And then before that, I worked as a developer for a few years. So yeah, like that's kind of...
Ray's being very humble. He's one of the OGs of AppSec. He's been doing it longer than me. He has a blog. He's worked at many companies. And he's run a 5-year-long security champions program that I reference a lot in my talks. Okay, so now you've had like a slightly better introduction. A lot of my guests do this.
I liked my introduction.
Humble, brag. Okay, so I dragged Ray onto my podcast so that we could talk about threat modeling. Ray, what the heck is threat modeling?
Threat modeling is this really awful things we make devs do. And we really don't understand it either, but it sounds really cool. But like, I mean, I think what threat modeling is, or what the point of threat modeling is for you to critically think about your apps in a way to like understand where you're weak at, where not even where you're weak at, but where you might be weak at, right? Like where the weaknesses are, where the threats lie.
I like to tell people it's an evil brainstorming session where you think of, because the first one that I sat in on, I used to work with this guy named Eric, who's so awesome. And he's like, oh, just come to this threat modeling session. And like, really, honestly, I thought there was going to be clay involved because I'm thinking of modeling clay because that is my only exposure at that point. And I was like, what? Okay. And then I go, there's no clay. And he says to the client, he's like, so we want to see what types of threats that our systems might be facing. And so what keeps you up at night? Like, what are the business's fear? And he told us. And then we had technical people, and I was like, we should ask them too. And I'm like, if you were going to hack your app, what would you do? And they had the most terrifying ideas. And so, Eric wrote it all down, took lots of notes, and then we tested for those things and we reviewed code for those things. And we tried to make sure those things would not happen. And but how do you explain what it is? Like, it's a conversation.
I think it is a conversation with with the dev teams, like the security, the business, and yeah, what you find important.
Would you say to people who say devs and technical people don't belong in that room during that conversation?
For devs and technical people, like who belongs in the room then?
Yeah, no, I've had lots of
That's all I want in the room.
Developer. It's like, they know the system. They literally built it. Of course they'll know the threats.
So I try not to do, I'm assuming that you mean that there's like only security people threat modeling.
And business people, just business people.
Yeah. If you're doing a technical threat model, I mean, you kind of need the technical people. I don't know how else to put that.
But is there such thing as a non-technical threat model? Like,
I think so, right?
Yeah.
You can threat model anything. Like one of the exercises that I like to take the devs through when I'm introducing threat modeling to them is like, imagine like you have to protect your house. Like everyone knows a like 1950s white picket fence house, right? Like that's a pretty common picture whenever it's like think of a house, right? Like think of some like colonial out there or whatever. Um and I'm like, okay, well the threats are the things that can go wrong, right? Like and like a lot of people focus on like, oh, like breaking and entering crimes. And I was like, well, did you ever think that like maybe a car just comes through your front, like through like the front side of your house, or a pipe burst even, right? That's a threat.
Yes.
And so I would say that those are kind of non-technical. You don't have to be like an expert at fixing anything to know where your threats lie or what you're concerned about. I think you want a healthy mixture of all voices in the room, right? You want a security person kind of there, like informing the conversation and leading it, and everyone else needs to put their ideas in, because the business has like what the business cares about, and the developers are going to have your more technical threats, and that's where you're going to get a fuller threat model. I don't want to say complete, but fuller.
I've heard a lot of threat modelers say all models are wrong, but some are useful. Have you heard that? And if so, how do you interpret?
Yeah, I heard it. Avi gave a talk in like OWASP in 2018, and that actually got me started down the threat modeling path. Actually, I was already in it, but that talk kind of sealed it. It was like a business value threat modeling was kind of like what his talk was about, and it was awesome. But it changed the way I looked at threat modeling, and that was one of the quotes he used. It was like a quote from some statistician. He was talking about normal models, but like I think it's accurate. Like all threat models are crap. Like, and
Why
they're
are they crap? Why are they crap?
they're
Because
like
every single one of those threats is not
no,
going to happen. It's not realistic.
no. A lot of them aren't going to happen. Some of them might. Who knows? Like we don't know. I mean, I wouldn't say they're crap. It's just like they're a useful tool to inform you, right? But it's not shouldn't be the only thing informing you. Um, I guess, huh, like I guess that like where it's like all model, like, it's all going to be wrong because you're right. Like your threat model is just speculation, right, of what you're concerned about, and it's just not. It's only one slice of the pie, or piece of the picture, and then I would say like the point of the threat modeling exercise is to get something useful out of it, right? So I try not to block any ideas, no matter how insane they are, until like later rounds when you're cleaning up the threat model, right? To make it like presentable to like upper management, say, even if you would ever show them. But I don't think any threat's bad. I don't think like I've had some really funny threats
Yeah.
that developers came up with, were really insane threats. It's just like no one would do that.
You
Um,
you might be
but
surprised. Tell me some. Tell me some. I have some wild
what?
threats if you don't want to share.
So I think some of the cool ones that I've seen was like there was like they had some file upload functionality, and one of the threat models that we put up around and it was like file upload, but it was like a note, like it had like a note sharing feature and stuff that you can upload. You could like make a note and upload a file to it. But I was like, you could just use this as your NAS, because like it like does it have uh any
Limits?
file upload stuff, right? Like does it have any file limits? Does it have file type?
Like a
Are you
security
checking for file
media
type? Can you,
server?
yeah, can you share it with anyone, right? Like, and you could, it's like, oh well, you can share it with anyone. Okay. uh well, it's like, well, I can just use this, throw whatever I want on here, and then just be like, hey, check out my friend wants a movie. I'll just rip the movie, throw it up on this little app, and be like, here's the note where you can download it. It cost
So
me
you
zero
say that's
dollars.
unlikely, and Ray, I had that happen.
Yeah.
I had
Well,
this
that was one of
happen.
the cool ones. That was not one of the unlikely ones. I can't think of any of the unlikely ones, but like that was one that really stood out that we like worked pretty good on like what cool things can we do with this functionality, right? And it's just like one of the devs just was like, hey, I can just upload whatever I want. I was like, yep, let's run with that. What can you, how would you like use that, right? So we got that story
We had
out of
an
it.
employee doing that with some site because we had all of these sites blocked, and the site was in China. And we're like, why is this one employee downloading? It turned out he was watching movies all day from from some app he had hacked. And I was like, no, please stop, please stop. This is very bad. Could you imagine the Chinese government being angry with the Canadian government over some guy watching movies? It's like, oh, please. So like another thing I like to do, so like when I come up with some of the threats and I talk about it with the developers, a thing that I often do is I'm like, so when we get the results from these automated tools, tools are dumb. Tools don't know what our threat model is. A tool says, oh, the security header is a low. I'm like, well, maybe it's a low in most cases, but maybe for us, this is super serious. Or it's like, this is critical. I'm like, meh, that's fine. Do you ever use that? Like use your threat models, like not only for testing or for design, but for prioritization maybe?
Yeah. So in like how I document threat models, like I just do a quick high, medium, low documentation.
Okay.
And I just like uh when I'm working with devs, like I do like I'm like, okay, just gut check this, right? Like just like gut feel for the initial uh kind
Like,
of severity, right?
okay.
Risk rating or whatever. And it's just um it's this like high, medium, low. And I'm like, high is like something we're gonna fix in the next month. Medium is like something we should fix in the next year. And low is something that like we're probably never going to get to, right? It's like it's something that we should be concerned about, but we're not for whatever reason. And I let them decide. I don't like to decide. I don't like to tell them because they're risk like right. They're not. It's not a vulnerability yet when you're doing a threat model. It might be like we'd have to verify if that app is existing or not. Um, but I like to let the developers and the business people prioritize like why like I want to use it to see what they're concerned about, right?
Yes. I personally found it super enlightening to hear what the business really, really, really cared about. And it was not what I had assumed would be the most important thing to them. And they're like, yes, we know we have this policy of blah, but our mission is to do these two things. And if they broke a policy, but they are kicking the crap out of those two things, forget that policy. I'm like, whoa, okay, well then. Have you, so like one instance this happened, I was working at elections and they were running, like they're signing up students to vote. And I don't know if you know, but young people don't vote very much. And poor people don't vote very much. And in Canada, we want every person who's legal to be encouraged to vote. And so then they're supposed to be back by a certain time, and they broke the policy by they stayed until 8 a.m. They stayed all night working for free to sign up thousands of students to vote. And that specific election, we had more young voters than we'd ever had in all the history of Canada. And I remember being like, you broke the policy. He's like, yeah, but I smashed our mission. And like I did, like my team was awesome. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not mad. You're amazing. So have you like ever come up with, have you ever had one of your threats come true that you are allowed to share?
Come true. Like, I
Like the threat
mean,
happened and you're like, haha, losers, we have a defense for that. Or maybe you decide not to fix it and then the threat came true and it's like, oh no.
I would say I don't think I could share any of that stuff.
Sorry.
And it's not fresh off of my mind, like
I have
on my
another
mind,
question.
truthfully. But like we, like at first it was the developers and I were threat modeling applications that already existed, right? So we were going back and retroactively threat modeling, and because of that, we prioritized certain fixes that we were like, hey, we should actually like the threat model was was there. We had tickets for some for me to investigate, some for the developers to investigate. And then we came back like a couple weeks later and said, okay, here's what we found out. And like we put in JIRA tickets, right, to get some of those things fixed that we deemed high severity for that threat model. But like that was like me letting the developers. I was not pushing that stuff because like I kind of want to only ticket developers if they're breaking policy, and like if things are insecure. And it's just like some of the threat models, it's not necessarily a security risk, but it is like you would have to chain together a couple different security vulnerabilities to get something, the one that I'm thinking of, to work. But like they just decided to fix it because it was high on the threat model, which was awesome, right? Like, and I think empowering your devs just to kind of take more responsibilities, like, I don't know, it helps.
Okay, so I have another question, and I have some answers for after you answer, but how can someone learn or get better at threat modeling?
Oh, threat modeling is hard. Like, I think I suck at threat modeling, truthfully, right? Like you just have to do it, and you just have to do a lot of it, and you have to do it really badly, and then you eventually stop doing it really badly, and you just do it badly, and like then you get kind of mediocre at it, right? And then like at some point you get to like the good status, and when you're the good status, then like people pay you to give talks about threat modeling, right? Like that's like the journey. Like I don't know if anyone's like, I am like the best threat modeler. Like I think that's pretty. I think there's a lot of different things there going on in threat modeling that I would like to meet the best person in threat modeling. I've met some really good ones though.
I feel like that person would be anxious and worried all the time because they'd be able to see so many threats everywhere they looked. Maybe we only want to be so good at it before we start freaking ourselves out.
Or maybe they're just like the most chill person ever because they're just comfortable knowing all the threats exist.
Okay, so I'm going to give a couple other ways people can learn threat modeling. So one is reading. So Adam Shostack put out a new book. He has multiple books. So this is Threats, What Every Engineer Should Learn from Star Wars. And you don't have to have seen Star Wars to understand, because I've only seen the first few minutes because I didn't like it.
I just picked that one up a couple months ago.
Nice. Another one would be to go to ThreatModCon on Sunday, October 30th in Washington, D.C., which is the day before OWASP Global AppSec this year. So if you're already going to OWASP Global AppSec, you could go a day earlier and go to ThreatModCon, of which I'm going to be one of the keynote speakers. And their call for papers is open, and Ray should apply. And other people should too, not just Ray. But also, Adam Shostack's going to be there giving training, and I'm going to be his teacher assistant. And so there's going to be a 3-day threat modeling course as well available that week.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are you going to bring the modeling clay for the threat modeling?
So, like, it turns out there's never clay involved. Like, come on. It's just, I never really done like the word modeling. Like, I literally thought we'd be on a computer, like visually modeling, like using AutoCAD or something. Or I was just like, okay, well, I hope it's not too hard. And I was like, oh, we're just doing evil brainstorming. He's like, yeah, that. Okay.
I think evil brainstorming is like way less intimidating than like threat modeling. Threat modeling sounds so official, and then like the devs are like, I noticed, are like get nervous and stuff. Like they're like, what is this? And like I tell them, and they think it's like super important. And then it just sits down of like me asking some leading questions, and then them kind of like, then us kind of just brainstorming and talking and just running with some ideas, you know?
Yeah. I try to make it like a conversation that I'm leading. And I tend to do stride in my head. So stride is one of the many methodologies that you can use for threat modeling. There's PASTA, there's attack trees, etc. But I just think of S, which is for spoofing, because it's an acronym, or T for tampering. And I don't use those words. I'm just like, for repudiation, I'm like, can we tell who would have done this? Like, would we be able to track which user did this or not? Because if we can't track that, maybe if that user is a jerk, that could be problematic. What are our options here?
That's actually one of my favorite questions, like, to ask this, because that's always, because it's like almost like half the time it's like they're like, yeah, we can totally track, and then other half the time they're like what are logs? And you're just like, okay, I'm gonna have to like schedule more meetings with you.
Okay, I want to take a second to thank our sponsor, and then I want to tell a story, which is the whole reason Ray agreed to be on this podcast. So first, a very special thanks to our sponsor, Semgrep. So Semgrep Supply Chain reachability analysis lets you ignore the 98% of false positives in open source vulnerabilities and quickly find and fix the 2% of the issues that are actually reachable in your code. You can get a free trial by going to semgrep.dev/products/semgrep-supply-chain. Or honestly, just go to semgrep.dev and there's like a big thing right there. It's really easy to find. I know, because I have been playing with it a lot lately. So thank you, Semgrep, for sponsoring We Hack Purple podcast. But back to you, Ray. Okay, so one of my friends was doing AppSec somewhere that I had previously done AppSec, and she was looking through Jira, that's their bug tracker, and she found a whole bunch of open pull requests. Or actually, she was in Azure DevOps and she found all these pull requests, and then she went and found the bugs in Jira that were me. And there were pull requests from my user of tons of bugs I had fixed. And honestly, Ray, I didn't even, because it was like 2020, 2021 when I was working there. And she was telling me this January of this year. And I was like, so she's like, you had critical bug fixes that were over 1 year old that still hadn't been merged. That's terrible. Like, and so she wanted to like spend lots of time to like pressure the devs to fix things. And she had been fixing things because they wouldn't fix them. And eventually she's just like, this is so frustrating. And she has a new job somewhere else now. But the point of the story was like, whose responsibility? Like, is it AppSec's responsibility? Is it business? So I want to hear Ray's take about Tanya needs to stay in her lane.
I have the same problem too, coming from a dev from a dev background. Like, I want to, like, if something's in there in a code base, like I want to get it fixed, right? Like, and I can, like, 9 times out of the 10, like I can. I actually usually, like, when I start with a new company, I ask to get some developer bugs, just to learn the code base, learn their method, like their processes and stuff, and just kind of get to know the team. So like I've committed lots of things to production apps, even though I'm not a developer, and some of those were bug vuln fixes, you know. But I don't know, it's hard because, like, I think, like, it really depends on your role. There are some teams, like security people, that are engineers, and their role may be to build or fix things, and their role might be to go in and just fix vulns. So, like, that, if that's your role, that's good for you, right? Like, but I think you need to be careful if you're just like a pen tester, AppSec engineer, or AppSec architect, or something like that, because you don't, like, ultimately they're not, the dev teams aren't going to learn if you just do the work for them. Like, you're not gonna, like, you're gonna make a lot of fans. Everyone is gonna be super happy with you and your work, and like that's 100% sure. They're gonna be super grateful that you did it, and like, but until they have to fix the same vuln 5 times because they keep on messing things up, they're not going to get it. It's not going to stick in their head. And like, I don't know, like, it's one of those things of like, you have to just learn from your mistakes, and you're not doing them any favors for doing the work for them. And that's like, you have to take that with a grain of salt, because like sometimes it's okay to just like be like, this is super important. They're not going to get it done for like 4 weeks. I can do it in like 2 hours. Like,
Yeah. But okay, so to rehash a bit of our personal conversation, I get really stressed. I'm like so concerned if I work somewhere and I'm doing AppSec with them and then they get mega owned. There's some huge data breach. There's this terrible problem that happened, and if I knew about it and I didn't get it fixed, I think the egg is all on my face. And like we saw with Uber throwing their CISO, I was gonna say under the bus, but it's more like into the jail. Like to me, that's terrifying. The idea of like doing your job in a way that, like, that the details of that aside, like, what if I'm held personally responsible when in fact, like, I was trying to fix these things and you were like, Tanya, it is your job to advise, to like show them the light, tell them your opinion, tell them these things. But if they don't fix them, that's they are accepting the business risk. It's their problem. Don't stay up all night freaking out, because you're always gonna be freaking out then.
yeah. Yeah, like, and you can't lose sleep over stuff like that because, like, the business, they have the funding, right? That's where you get your funding from. Even in security, you get it from the business, right? Like, if they thought it was important enough to fix, they'd fix it. And they're prioritizing other things. And as a security person, like what can you do? Like, if you're not willing to go or you can't go and fix that stuff, like, your job is to notify the people responsible, and then, like, if that doesn't get fixed, shoot it up the chain. And like what else can you do? Like, why should you lose sleep over somebody else's decision?
Well, and it's so then when a security incident happens, things get serious. So I went into security and did counterterrorism activities for about a year and a half, and I can't give a lot of details. But so we had many bunkers, like many
But if
stories.
you've seen Mission Impossible 3, it's basically her life story.
That's basically what I was doing. I was not sitting in a dark room, several stories underground downtown Ottawa, bored. Anyway, but one of the things they wanted to send something on, I was like, oh, that's not fiber optic cable, so we can't send that. And I had sent a message to my boss. I'm like, just so you know, one of these cables is just a regular Ethernet cable, and I won't let them send stuff. And she ignored me, and I emailed her again. And so I really wanted this cable fixed because the rest was fiber optics. And like, they literally put like razor wire inside the walls. Like, they're very intense about top secret stuff in Canada, and I assume other countries. And they're like, no. So eventually, we had like the spy agency come over to inspect, and I had no idea they're coming. And so I walk up to the door to badge in, and there's like these three women standing there, and I'm like, hi. And they're like, hi. And I'm like, who are you? Do you have it? Like, so, and they're like, oh, well, you could just get the door. I was like, no. And they're like, so like, I was like, stand back, and I badged in, and then they went to, and I pulled the door closed. I'm like, just so you know, I'm calling security on you. And it turned out it was like the spy agency. And they're like, wow, she's great. She told us right where to go. And I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, it was a test. I had no idea. And I was telling them, like, I'm stressed out about this one cable, and so I won't let anyone plug in this office because this one cable's the wrong. And so they sent an email to my boss, and they're like, you have to do this. She's like, yes, I've told Tanya 100 times. And so I attached my 3 emails of me warning her and her saying to get over myself and stop overreacting. I'm like, yes, these are the 3 times when I told you and you told me I was overreacting. And she was like, we did not get along. I went and got a new job. But the point of the story was like, when is it your responsibility? Like, how do you put down that feeling of responsibility? Like, they've decided not to fix a thing that you think they absolutely need to fix. How do you put that down and not worry about it later? Because that is something I struggle with. Like, you can't tell
Wow,
the Canadian spy agency on your boss all the time.
that is true. You cannot.
I told on her so many times. She was so not impressed with me. But I'm not going to break a law. I'm not going to break a law at work. I'm just not. I don't care if you're my boss and you told me to do it. I'm not doing it. I don't care. But like when there's a risk to a system and the manager of that team's like, whatever, I accept this risk. Like, how do you? So this was what our conversation got to,
Yeah.
folks. This is what me and Ray struggle with on a personal level, or at least I do. Ray's got totally under control, and I need him to teach me his good
I do
ways.
not. Oh, I have a way method of not caring under control. Like I don't care about a lot of things, but I'm very good at not bringing home or work home with me. I mean, which is weird because I work from home, but
Yeah.
like once I sign off, I am like my brain does not care about work. I am
I want to
focused on
be
other things.
more like Ray. Like, anyway, okay, so I have one last topic because I said I'd only keep you so long, and like Ray only lets me bother him so many times per year, and I'm like close to my quota. But okay, so sometimes when I deal with clients, so I do a lot of consulting with different AppSec teams, and sometimes the big serious thing is actually a ridiculously crappy and slow change management process. And I explain to them the main risk is your change management process. Like it's so bogged down, it takes so long. We can't possibly have a service level agreement to fix critical bugs in 2 days if the absolute fastest emergency release takes 5 days, because we actually need time to fix the bug, test it, and then we have to do all your stupid steps that don't, they're often security theater, in my opinion. They're often theater. They're not actually giving more security. They're actually just like, some of them are just a show. Some of them are legit. Ray, what do we do? Or do you see this? Am I the only person that has this?
So I've seen like change management stuff that was kind of like legally required because of contracts and things like that that you had to do, and like you had to do like X amount of testing or a certain type of testing to get something released. But usually those have clauses for emergency vulnerability fixes and stuff like that, right? And like they should. Let's say like other types of like you mentioned the other type of change management of like where you do change management for the sake of change management. I don't think that's helping anyone. And because like I don't know, I've worked in doing like customer support for a ITIL company like back really early in my career. So I learned a lot about change management and like in that in like ITIL, I think it was like B2 or V3 had just come out. I can't remember, but it was wild. I don't remember.
It's heavy, heavy process.
But there were some that just had super heavy processes, and like sometimes like it would take a month to get a change into production. And like how do you do that? Like release security fixes? I have no idea. Like if that's your process, like you can't. Like in that case, like change your SLAs. Like your SLAs should be something that is actually achievable. And if it's not, and then you're gonna get like people looking at your SLAs, like your customers or whoever partners, and they're gonna be like, whoa, your SLAs are like way too like lax, right? I don't know. I don't like there's a lot of I like very agile like CI/CD processes, but those also lack like they miss stuff in QA because there's not a lot of manual QA components going on sometimes, right? I don't know. That stuff's all hard, and until we get better tooling and more standardized ways of doing things, I don't think we're going to solve that problem.
I feel like it depends on the place that you work, because I've worked at places where I remember working in the Canadian government and this really high up executive saying how they were going to start outsourcing a lot of their IT. And then he says to the IT department, no offense. And I don't know why people think they can say the words no offense and then say offensive things and you're not supposed to be offended. But so he says, no offense, but private industry can always do it cheaper, faster, and better. To which I responded, yes, because they don't follow any of the policies. They don't have to get all the approvals. They don't have to support that piece of crap that they put together with duct tape and bubble gum. And we have to support tons of crap that you bought from private industry that has no documentation and doesn't follow the common look and feel, like it's not bilingual. So we're trying to make it, but yeah, so you hand us giant piles of crap all the time, and we're busy trying to put those together. And so yes, it takes us longer to build an app because of the constraints that you as the executive put upon us. And he was like, oh, and I was like, yeah. If we didn't have to do security, if we didn't have to do accessibility, if we didn't have to do all the different legislations, especially like the government has even more than private industry, I'm like, yes, if you don't follow any rules or do a good job, yeah, it's easy to get things done fast.
Yeah.
And so I feel like one of the things is if they're complaining about how slow things are, take that, like, so I worked at this one place, Ray, where there was a 21 step approval process for every dynamic scan I was supposed to run, 21 steps. Or was it 23? And it took 3 weeks. So it must have been a 23 step process because it was 21 days to get it. And this was years ago. And I won't tell you which embarrassing place I was working that did that. And then my boss's boss had to approve it. And I was like, I don't know how to say this, but I don't think that person even knows my name or cares that I exist. They do not care about my scam. They do not care. We are wasting that person's time. She or he has tons of more important things to do than sign off on a scan that they don't even understand. And they're like, well, we need to do this to, I'm like, do you think that person knows, you know who I should be getting the sign off from? The DBA and the lead of the dev team. So I'm not doing it on a day they're updating that system. It should be like the tech people figuring out. And so we went through and I was like, does this part add value? And so I did not get it down to a reasonable, but I brought a couple steps down and one less level of approval. And it took like 6 months. However, then we could run way more scans. And we started doing like a template and all this stuff so that we could be way faster. And it wasn't like a complete win, but it's like the DevOps people where they say you want to take time to improve your daily work. And that made my teammates' work way less sucky. But I was like, we need to disable this whole thing. Like or disassemble this whole thing if it's not adding value. And yeah.
But is it not adding value, or is it not adding value to you? Because it is adding value to other people, right? Like it's adding value to your boss, for example, because your boss doesn't have to sign off on it because the boss's boss signs off on it. So that's like a whole CYA thing for everyone under that boss, right?
So it's then it covered your butt. Okay, yeah. So I hear what you were saying, but
it's completely inefficient. I totally agree with you there. But I'm just saying that like sometimes those inefficiencies exist for a reason, and to get rid of them, you have to figure out why and what you can do. Like maybe it's a change in the policy language, right, that you need to add to make sure that like those people are already covered, right? And like a lot of the like some of the previous companies that I worked for, we just had a scanning and pen testing policy that was like a super high level policy document that basically gave us permission to do enough things to do our job within reason, right? That we didn't need where we didn't need approvals, right? We still had to get approvals for some things, but like 80% of our job we didn't have to get approvals for.
Yeah, so that would be so much better. I remember like leaving that water fail shop and feeling sad at the people I left behind, because I was like, I wish I could take you with me to a better place. It's called private industry. But I feel like some things add value and some things don't. And maybe that thing's been there for like 5 years. And maybe 5 years ago it offered a lot of value. And since things have changed, it only offers a little value. And maybe how much slowdown it creates or work for other teams. This is a thing I try to look at when I'm doing security stuff. I'm like, listen, am I making twice as much work for someone else when I do this thing that's better for me?
I think that's something that security people have to like realize is like you're not creating 5 vulnerabilities in Jira that devs have to fix. You're creating like weeks worth of work possibly, right? Like because there's not only, and like I think that's one of the reasons I do like to join, like when I mentioned earlier that I like to like onboard with the dev team, with a dev team, whatever job I'm at, is like they might not get to pick their tickets, you know, like some dev teams have a lot of freedom and other dev teams don't, and like you're making a lot of assumptions like as a security person to being like, oh, this is a quick fix. Well, like what, how do they work? Like you don't know if it's a quick fix because their processes might be horrible, like you mentioned.
It's true though. It's true. Okay, so I could talk to you all day because we know, because we've done that. But I want you to tell people about your blog, and then I want you to tell people about AI.
Cool. Yeah. So uh me and my friend Aaron write a or have a blog called hella-secure.com, and uh
And it's
maybe
awesome. I
yeah,
read his blog. Him and Aaron are bright and very experienced, and their blog's awesome.
we're starting, or I'm starting to write it back up. Aaron can't for some reasons related to his work and stuff, but um yeah, so I'm gonna start blogging. I have like I'm working on like 5 different blog posts. I just need to finish one and post it. But so I do want to start
Listeners,
getting my thoughts out there again. Whether those
listeners
that's
and
a good thing or
viewers, you
bad
are my
thing.
witness. Ray's gonna blog more.
I'm going to blog more.
Okay, tell them about Aya, and then I'm gonna invite everyone to hang out with me in Vegas.
Cool. So aya.io. So that is my threat modeling company. So
AIYA.io.
there you go. Yeah. So I'm working on making a threat modeling tool to make it easier for devs to threat model. It's just like I think on my thing it says like we make threat modeling simple, or threat modeling made simple, something like that. But like I just wanted to make a tool for that to support the methodology and documentation method that I already use. So um, I hate making my own threat models, like drawing out the picture. So this kind of like lets me document it in a way and generate the fancy picture and shit. So
Ray,
that's
you're awesome at AppSec, and you're gonna have to work on your sales skills.
I I don't want to work on my sales skills. I want to do like I just want to do build cool things and like
I
help
know.
people. Like I don't even want to make like I don't even am like I guess let's say I don't want devs like to force devs to learn security. I just want everything that they're using to just like already be secure so they can just work on like cool shit. Like I want to just build cool things to like make security easier. I guess I don't know.
I agree. I agree.
It's
And
too hard. I wanted to make my job less hard.
like all AppSec people, we want to put ourselves out of a job.
No, I still want a job. I just want my job to be less hard.
Right. Okay. On that note, I am going to Las Vegas for what is affectionately termed as Hacker Summer Camp, which is where I met Ray. Was it 2017 when we met, or 2018? It was a long time ago. But we met.
Yeah, it was one of those.
He slagged me on Twitter a lot, so I asked if he wanted to have dinner because I have a weird sense of humor. And so I am going to be the opening keynote for the Diana Initiative, and I am a proud sponsor of their amazing conference. If you are not a man and you're going to Hacker Summer Camp, it is the most friendly, most comfortable, most safe space you could probably find besides inside your own hotel room. It's really nice, it's really welcome, and men are welcome, but it's just a place specifically to try to make everyone there's not a man feel very comfortable and safe. And quite frankly, the talks are awesome. And I don't mean just mine. I actually have like been going through like trying to figure out, I'm like, oh, both these talks look good, but they're at the same time. So then the next day is B-Sides, where I will be giving a workshop with my friends Enolu and Colleen Day about how to add stack analysis to your CI/CD without losing all of your friends on the dev team. Then I will be at the AppSec Village, which is part of DEF CON, and I'm going to do kind of a hangout session, and we're going to write regex and rule writing. We're going to use Semgrep as the tool, but the idea is how you can use regex to find vulnerabilities in code. And I'm going to give a talk about DevSecOps worst practices at the AppSec Village. I have no plans to be at DEF CON yet, but if someone gives me a free ticket, I'll go. So I hope to see some of you there. I'm going to plan a We Hack Purple meetup. I'd love to meet lots of you in person, especially if we've like corresponded or you've taken my courses or read my book. I'd love to meet you. I'm going to publish the schedule soon, so you could see lots of places where I'll be. Please come say hi. Unlike Ray, I am extremely extroverted and I love meeting tons and tons and tons of people, whereas Ray would prefer not to meet 100 plus people per day because he's normal.
I mean, when I talk all day, that's all I do. So I'm 100% comfortable meeting new people all day because that's all I do. I have so many devs that I haven't even met yet. So
but with that, I want to thank our sponsor, Semgrep. And Ray, thank you for coming on my podcast again. I appreciate you giving me the time, and I appreciate you trying to help me and others find ways to be able to kind of put, like, to not burn out, because we can actually put stuff down at the end of the day. This is the thing that I'm going to keep bugging you about, and I think you should write a blog post about hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Ray, do you have any last things that you would like to say before we sign off?
Yeah, if someone wants to give me a DEF CON ticket, a hotel room, and a flight out there, I would also appreciate it. But no, other than that, like Tanya's cool. Check out her community. I'm on that sometimes.
He is. Ray is one of my many moderators. We have a giant volunteer team that helps us moderate and make sure that everyone's somewhere between okay and really nice. So we don't have any meanies, which is quite awesome. So if you want to join the community, go to community.wehackpurple.com, or if you want to go to our newsletter.wehackpurple.com, and so on. But this has been Tanya Janka, your host of the We Hack Purple podcast, with Ray Leblanc of Hello Secure. Bye. Thank you very much. Yeah.